Hey guys, so today we'll be walking through the experience for adding animations within Project Charm. We'll be looking at two different kinds of animations. So one is how objects can enter, do something, and exit the slide. And the second kind of animation is how objects can transform from one state to another. We already know that we have a seamless transformation or an auto animate paradigm applied between states. That is, if we have an object present across the different states and just its visual properties and positions have been changed, then it will seamlessly transform from one state to another. But what happens when we have very disparate states, like in the case that we have in front of us? I have four buttons, and I have some information that shows up on click of each of these buttons. So getting there has certain information, things to do, cuisine and culture, and getting in touch. So since all these states have very disparate content, so some of them have images and some of them have rectangles, auto animate kind of leaves us with a slightly underwhelming result because we don't have the same objects which are transforming to give us a nice smooth effect. We really want to have something like this where we're able to control how these objects can enter, and then my default state slides in. When I click on this, and I have a slight animation to how this particular state comes into view. Same thing here, where I want to have a completely different animation here. And finally, my getting in touch information, where I want like a slight bobbing or like a floating effect for all of these cards. Let's take a look at how we would be configuring such an experience within Project Charm. So I have a multi-state object selected here, and I have the 5 states that have to be loaded on click of each of these buttons. So first thing that I really want to do is for these buttons to slide onto my slide. So I'm going to select them using Shift, and I'm just going to say slide in. From the left is fine, and you can see on my timeline that all of these objects have already been selected and they all start together. That is at the 0th second. But what I really want to do is for this button to slide in a little bit after the first one. So I'm going to select this button and I'm going to say, give it a little bit of a delay. I'm going to do the same thing for my third one as well. And I can switch off my effects if I find that a little bit overwhelming. And then I'm going to do the same thing for button 4, and the same thing for my multi-state object, which is this object, because I want these 4 buttons to slide in, and then I want this particular thing to come into view. Right, we have our animation set up, but we don't have an effect set up here. So I'm going to just say scale in. And this just controls how my default state is coming into view. But what I really want to do is also control how different objects within my state would be animating. So if I click on this horizontal bar, I open this state animation panel. So if I have my state panel open here, it would collapse and become this panel here. If it is not in view, then this panel would be appearing along with my state animation panel. By default, we have our default state selected, and hovering on each of these would show us the corresponding objects on the canvas. So you can see here that I have 2 modes. I have a working mode and I have a summary mode. So when I click on the summary mode, what it does is it takes me to a view where I can quickly review my work and see how objects are animating across different states. So right now I just have my default state configured as a scale in animation. So hence you can see that here. But since we're still continuing to work, we're going to go back into the working view, and we're going to select the next state. And I have my group 1 selected by default, and I'm going to say slide in. From the left is fine. I'll select group 2 and I'll say slide in, but this time from the right. Since I want this to come in a little bit after this, I can say I want a little delay here, and I can push it here, so you can see that the delay has also been updated here. Next, we'll quickly move on to the next state, and we'll select image 1 and 3 and say slide in, but this time from the top. And just for state 2, image 2, slide in, but from the bottom. So we have our third state as well. Now we'll move on to the fourth state. We have 6 images. So what I essentially want to do is have one image load after the other, like we saw in the prototype earlier. So I'm going to select all of them, and I'm going to say stretch in, and I'm going to select only group 6, and I'm gonna push it with a 1.2 second delay. Next, what I'm going to do is select each of these bars, so you can see that the corresponding object is even highlighted on the canvas for me, so I know which object I'm selecting. Once I have all of them selected, I'm just going to go ahead and distribute them. So what happens now is each of these images is coming into view at exactly the same interval of time, and it looks really even and smooth. Next, I'll move on to my emphasis, so I can even scroll here. I don't think I really want to add an emphasis, so I'm going to move on to exit, and in my exit, I'm going to say stretch out just to have some consistency, and I'm going to select all of them, make it a little bit quicker because we want this to happen a little faster, and give it delay so we can see that it's been moved. And finally, we'll move on to the last state. I have my first object selected by default. I select the other two, and I'm going to say, just to try something a little bit different, hinge in this time, and from the left. So I have my entrance for the default state as well. I'm going to go ahead and do emphasis because I want to have a little floating effect while my state is in view. So I'm going to add a vibrate, and the direction is fine, but what I really want to do is have a custom duration of 6 seconds here. By default, Project Charm lets me kind of have a default that is selected already, which works best with the effect that's been selected. So if I have a shake and a vibrate, it's probably quicker, but if I have a bounce, then it's probably a longer duration. So I really want it to be a long vibration because I want it to really look like it's floating. So I'm going to say 6, and then I'm even going to set the repeat to until the state exits. So this means that this particular animation will be repeated until the state is out of view. So now that we have all of our animations set up across our different states, we'll get into the review mode, and we're just going to review our work. So we have the state entering in a hinge in, and then we have when the state is in view, we have the emphasis, and then it exits with no real animation, and that's fine. Move on to state 4. We can audit our work quickly. I think that looks good. And state 3, 2, and our default state. So now that I'm done with it, I can drag or push this thing down, or I can just click on that icon to dismiss my state animation panel, and you can see that we're back to where we left off. That is the previous timeline with the default state selected.